legalized. 70% of Canadians approve of decriminalization. We'll talk about those differences. And 92% of us approve of marijuana being used for medical purposes. Well, legalizing pot, even decriminalizing it, hasn't been much of an issue in this federal election. But you know what? It is something politicians have been talking about for decades. In fact, it came up in the 1979 election debate. Here's what a couple of the leaders had to say.
We've taken the position that it should be decriminalized, but that's it. We are not, speaking for myself, I'm not in favor of encouraging the use of marijuana, just frankly as I'm not in favor of encouraging the use of alcohol or smoking.
I agree with Mr. Broadbent on this. The principles are the same, and I agree with Ed's assessment of do we agree. We attempted, Mr. Arond attempted even in this last session of Parliament to see if we could get it passed in 1 or 2 days, and the Créditistes said no.
Different faces this time around, Gian, but you know what? It could be deja vu. 25 years later, we're still debating the same thing. Does it feel like that for you?
Well, I love that quote because it really says it all. This continues to be an issue. First of all, I'm really glad we did this show, myself and the fabulous Play production team, because this is an issue. Even though politicians are running away from it, it continues to be one. And I think that there's this myth. You just talked about Canada being liberal. Maybe Canadians' views are liberal, but the laws aren't liberal still. And so there is this disconnect that continues to exist that we talked about in the show, where almost 10% of Canadians regularly use the stuff, not necessarily every day, but regularly smoke marijuana or somehow use it, and a criminal justice system that isn't in touch with that. So it continues to be an issue, and you know, some people sort of feel like Canada has become more liberalized. You know, we were on the cover of The Economist and Time magazine as being cool, you know, Canada cool marijuana laws. The laws actually haven't changed that much. Outside of medicinal marijuana, they haven't changed at all. So this continues to be an issue for a lot of people in this country.
And we're going to hear, of course, many comments from people across the country, but we do have some invited guests who are joining us for this hour. Here in Toronto with me in studio is Stephen Meredith with the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. Musician Ashley McIsaac, you know his face, also with us here in Toronto. In Ottawa, joining us is Diane Watts. She's with the group Real Women. And in Calgary tonight, Boris Saint-Maurice, the leader of the Marijuana Party. They all have an opinion, not afraid to share it. Joining us now by telephone, not afraid to share his opinion, is Brian from Moncton. Brian, welcome to Play Goes to Pot. What are your thoughts? Is it time to legalize marijuana?
Absolutely, it's time to legalize marijuana. At this point, with the money that this government is spending on the prohibition of marijuana is insane, and considering the fact the money that we could be bringing in through taxation. Now, I'm now 38 years old, and I don't believe in my lifetime, unfortunately, that we'll ever see the legalization of marijuana in this country due to the Americans and their position on this issue. And
so you think we're kind of stymied by the Americans? Are we afraid?
Well, unfortunately, I think in many respects that the government is somewhat afraid simply because of the restrictions through trade that the Americans can impose upon us.
Okay, Brian, well, thanks for weighing in. Gian, your thoughts?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, Mayor Larry Campbell, who you saw on the show, Play Goes to Pot, I put that question to him. What about some sort of reprisal or some sort of, you know, angry reaction from the United States? And he sort of says, well, when are we going to start standing up for ourselves as Canadians and actually leading the way we claim to, you know, in a progressive way around the world? But I wanted to make the point right off the top here that it's not necessarily a health debate. You know, it's not necessarily a debate around whether you think it's a good thing to do or a bad thing to do. It's a debate around whether the laws are working, you know, whether prohibition works, and I think Brian was speaking to that.
We're going to go to Allison, who joins us on the phone from Burlington, Ontario. Hello to you. And Allison, your thoughts. Is it time to legalize marijuana?
Hi, Sue Hunter. Hi, Dion. Hi, everybody. You better believe it's time to legalize marijuana. I just watched your program, and it was a bit of a shame that you cut my lawyer, Professor Alan Young, off in mid-sentence, because I believe he knows that marijuana or cannabis is recognized worldwide as medicine. And again, because we both work with these doctors all over the world, maybe CBC could better explain their choice of editing use comments to their viewers who know it has medicinal value, but others, again, just have to learn. But definitely, because it's not legalized, people like myself can't get it as medicine. So we are constantly caught up in the black market, and that is wrong. That has to change.
Allison, thanks so much. I want to talk about some of the medicinal uses. And, you know, we have a guest here, Stephen Meredith, with the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And people might think, Stephen, that the center would be against decriminalization. You are for that, but you are against legalization of marijuana. Tell me the distinction and why so.
That's right. We took a position in support of decriminalization a few years ago based on the evidence from other jurisdictions around the world where they've implemented decriminalization, where they've either decided not to enforce the laws as they are, or they've actually changed the laws so that you get a ticket instead of a criminal record. And we haven't seen a corresponding increase in drug use. We haven't seen a corresponding increase in problems, but what we have seen is a reduction of the social and individual problems that people experience by being criminalized.
And that's one of the things that, Xian, you were talking about, was the prohibition, the law is not working the way it is. So what are you looking for? What are you suggesting from the center?
Well, we're looking at decriminalization. So we think that we still need to give the message to people that we discourage marijuana use. So we don't go as far as legalization, but we don't think that people should get a criminal record for possession of marijuana.
And you discourage marijuana use because?
Because we know, because we're an addiction treatment center, that people still have problems with marijuana. And in fact, in our youth clinic, the #1 drug that people seek treatment for is marijuana.
And at what age are we talking about?
This would be 18 to 24.
Xian, when you were out, of course, out on the road, and did you talk to people about decriminalization as well? And were there differences, between the young people and those who were perhaps older?
Well, I think the problem around decriminalization is that it means a lot of different things. I mean, all the party leaders, in a certain way, except maybe Jack Layton and the Marijuana Party, of course, sort of call for decriminalization, but it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Legalization's a lot clearer, and I think there is a wind of change, certainly amongst young people, to sort of, and I think that's where that 47% is, sort of saying, well, why don't we legalize this stuff? Once again, to quote Mayor Larry Campbell, who is a former RCMP drug squad officer, he's saying legalize it, regulate it, and tax it. But just to point out the medicinal marijuana that the Allison, the caller, made, it's a good point that we can't, of course, run the entire interviews we do with everyone. And Alan Young's position was, I mean, he represents patients, so of course he of course thinks there's some value to this. He was saying there needs to be, he told me he thinks there needs to be more, more official studies done around medicinal marijuana. The point is, it's hard to say to an AIDS patient who is, sitting there saying, this is what makes me feel better, this is what cuts the nausea, gives me an appetite. It's hard to say it doesn't have good effects.
Can you tell us anything on the medicinal purposes, Stephen?
Well, I think I agree that more studies need to be done, and I think
there is one going on right now, a clinical study on effects to AIDS patients.
Yes, and in fact, there is some evidence to suggest that, of course, it does reduce nausea, it does increase appetite in people with AIDS, and so there's in those areas, I think there's a little more solid ground. In some of the other areas, there just really needs to be more research, and because it's an illegal substance, it's kind of difficult to do the research.
Okay, we're going to leave it there and take a break, but we're going to be back with more of your calls on whether pot should be legalized. I know you've thought about it, so give us a call. Here's a look at some of the health risks linked to using marijuana.
That marijuana is harmful, and I suppose that's the main reason why it is illegal.
Marijuana is for play. It is not for work. It is to relax you, helps me go to sleep, and makes me feel good. I've had my friends around. We have a bull session.
Gotta love it. Pierre Burton, marijuana is for play, he says. While you are watching Play Goes to Pot. We want to hear what you think. Is it time to legalize marijuana?
Call us at 1-800-481-NEWS, that's 481-6397, or email us at play@cbc.ca and tell us what you think. Suhan, I've got a couple of emails already.
Okay.
One from Prince George, BC. Ian S. Irvine says, our politicians have no legitimacy being involved in the legalization of marijuana debate, as their hypocritical position on the legal yet deadly sale of tobacco products, including receiving revenue from those sales, robs them of any ability to morally lead. There's the old tobacco, alcohol, marijuana argument.